Hey, everybody, it's Wednesday. Maybe, I don't know what day you're listening to this, but if it is a Wednesday and it's 4:20 p.m., that means this episode is just debuting. That means this is the very first time. If it's Wednesday, it's a 4:20 p.m. on the nose. This is the very first time this particular episode is debuting. But if it's the following Wednesday at 4:20, maybe you're watching it not live. I don't know what's happening here. It's because Cannabis, brand new episodes every Wednesday, 4:20 p.m. on YouTube, Spotify with video, and all audio podcast every Thursday as well. My name is B.C. Wehman. This is Dustin Kava on the other side. This is because Cannabis. We talk cannabis. We talk all sorts of fun stuff with a variety of people. Got a great guest today to talk through some high-level stuff, looking at investing, looking at trade shows. Dustin and I have had our fair share of thoughts on trade shows and such. Follow us at MeetWM socially. Dustin Kava, how are you today?
I am amazing today. This is a great afternoon.
Well, good for you, man. I'm glad you're fired up. Hey, I have a question for you. I don't know much about you like where I met you. I feel like I learn something new about you all the time. There's always some new random fact that you seemingly tell the guests in the green room before we get started and go on air. And I usually bring them up sometimes, but not today. Today, I want to know about little Dustin Kava, little DK running around the road. I don't know if your childhood dream, I don't know before you had a beard. Love to see you before you had a beard. I don't know what Dustin Kava before there was facial hair, before all those eras, when you were running around in your little onesies and whatnot. What did Dustin Kava want to be when he grew up? When you were a wee lad, when you were a wee bod, maybe a little older, maybe even in high school era, and you actually started to think about a career, a profession. What did you want to be, so to speak, when you got older? What did you want to do?
You know what, man? I can't remember shit before I was 9, really. Like, I can't remember anything I truly wanted to be. My mom was always at the fucking forefront of education and technology. And so, like, she would be testing 3D virtual reality stuff 30 years ago, you know? I remember we had, like, you know, one of the original 14.4 modems to get onto the internet when no one even understood or knew what the heck was going on, you know? So always at the forefront of my thought for the future, always had technology somehow related into it. And then, you know, going into high school and stuff, I consistently for years worked towards, you know, an MCSC, like Microsoft certifications and stuff like that to be an administrator. And it's always, you know, and then eventually been developing websites for 25 years. So since I was 16 developing websites, I don't know, man. It's always been something with computers, with technology. Yeah,
it makes sense a lot, given all the early adoption you do of different softwares. And it's interesting, right? There's a good parallel to that. Cannabis has still struggling with early adoption and where it's going to go. But it makes sense as a whole. You're always telling me about these new apps, this new software, like well before it's there and before it's coming down the road. You're a few years probably on the research and whatnot of those things. So that makes sense a little bit. I don't know what I wanted to be when I was like younger. Similar thing, right? I know we've all repressed those memories. I'm 50 years old, man. I don't know what I did for a while, but I do know that when I was in high school, I got bit, Dustin, by the creative bug. I got bit by the entertainment bug. Your boy there, back when he was just a mere Brian Christopher Wehman, before B.C. Wehman emerged like a phoenix from the ashes to entertain you every Wednesday at 4:20 p.m. and Thursdays on Spotify. Back then, I wanted to be an actor. Clearly, I have a gift for talent. I mean, come on, a gift for talent doesn't make sense. Clearly, I don't have a gift for speaking is what I don't have. So I started acting, did community theater. I was a superstar, did a few things, and I went to college. I went to college and auditioned to be in the theater program of Otterbein at the time college, now Otterbein University, but Otterbein College at the time, wanted to be in the theater program. I prepared an amazing monologue from You're a Good Boy, Charlie Brown, where I was Charlie Brown sitting on the bench. It ended with a dramatic bag over the head. I sold it with all the passion that I had in my body in that moment. I was soundly rejected. It must have been terrible. Soundly rejected from that moment. So I transitioned. I was still going to Otterbein. I wanted to go there. I fell in love with the campus on a tour. And so I knew, obviously, they said I couldn't act. They were correct. But then I transitioned to what's a like-minded field, so to speak, that Otterbein just happened to have a kick-ass college radio station. Oh yeah, WOBN. I know it well. Lots of time there. I was at the time for a while on WOBN's airwaves, Brian Knight. That was my air name for a while. My grandmother's maiden name is Knight. So I was Brian Knight for a long time, wanted to be on the radio. This high-pitched, nasally voice, it just doesn't cut it, especially in the 90s. But in the 90s, you needed a deep radio voice guy. You had to be that, and I didn't have it. The era now, you have a lot of different voices, even on different sports talks radios. Anyone with the ability to communicate has a much better shot. But back then, man, you needed that golden gift, like that macaroni and cheese guy that got discovered and then flamed out back again. But you needed that golden voice to get onto there, and I didn't have it. I also didn't have the absurd unearned confidence that I have today either. So there's that as well. Like, that's earned. That's what I wanted to be. And I tried so hard. Like, I did all the radio shifts there. I worked a couple of gigs as an intern at radio stations in Columbus, Ohio, where I was. I got free tickets to a lot of concerts for those years, but it wasn't for me at all. But I've tried. Clearly, here we sit back today, like trying to get back into it. You said you could picture me? You think I'd be a good radio DJ?
I totally picture you with a little tape recorder when you're like 7, 8 years old, talking on the little plastic microphone into it. Yeah.
The one thing I had back then, I said, we're going to bring in Lenny Berry right now, our guest today, because Dustin apparently didn't bother to pay his Wi-Fi bill. I'm not sure what's happening, Lenny. He'll come back at some point. This is not the first time it's happened. Welcome, Dustin. You awkwardly weren't here when we brought in Lenny Berry. Lenny Berry, I had a better bit to bring you in on, but Dustin ruined that with his bad Wi-Fi. You were back in the day, Lenny. You were an on-air personality back in the day. You're working the radio station. Yes, I want to ask you, here's my question, and this is for both of you, both Dustin and Lenny. Lenny first. Radio, much like cannabis, is this career that everyone that seems to be really good in radio and really famous always tells you not to go into it because it's a shitty job. Like, you shouldn't go into radio. It's terrible. Like, don't go into it, as they're enjoying their time on the radio. Cannabis is seemingly, I feel, more and more the same way. We have this show, Lenny. We're here every week. We talk to hundreds at this point of people in the industry. Half of them say, oh, it sucks. It's so hard to go into. Don't go into cannabis, kids. Don't go into it. But there's all these jobs and there's all these opportunities. Why do people gatekeep cool jobs, Lenny Berry? You have had a lot of cool jobs. You got a lot of cool jobs on your LinkedIn. We'll talk through some of those. We're talking with Lenny Berry, founder of OCHBS and more, the Ohio Cannabis Health and Business Summit, coming up this weekend, October 6th. October 7th, you want to be there. Links below. Buy your tickets below. Why do people gatekeep fun jobs, Lenny?
Well, I mean, I think it's not the norm, right? It's not the norm to have a radio job or get into entertainment or sports, because that's not what everybody does. So it's easier to say go to college, get a 4-year degree, and go find a job in a factory or working as a manager or something. It's just easier to do. So that's my thought on it.
But I wonder, these cats are having fun. So is it just easier to, okay, how about that? Is it easier just to respond and end the conversation in that way? It's just more of like, I just don't even want to talk about it. Like, or is it I mean, truly, they're having a blast.
Don't come for my job thing?
Yeah.
Or is it that's what I've always wondered. Is it, I don't want you in this because I don't want you to take my role? Or is it maybe like what Lenny said, like, I just want to end the conversation. I don't want to really go with it. Just easier to say, don't do this. The same conversation comes up in athletics too, right? You have the same conversation in these jobs that are unique and interesting, but athletics, you kind of have, you can tell, like, you can tell the people that are rising. You can tell the cream of the crop. Entertainment's interesting, right? People come out and know all the time.
Yeah. I think it's also a fear of you not getting hurt, right? Not crushing your dreams, because they see that it's going to be difficult. They've been down the road. So, true story, my mom is very close to Steve Harvey's brother. So when I was getting ready to get into the space as a DJ, not necessarily entertainment. So in school, I was DJing in 8th grade all the way through college, and told my mother, hey, you know what? I'm about to start a record label. So I built a studio in her house, and guess who calls me? And I was like, this is who? It's like, yes, your mom wanted us to really kind of give you some guidance on the entertainment space. And our guidance to you really is not to crush your dreams, but dude, you probably be better off using that college degree and getting a paycheck, right? But my mother will tell you, or parents will tell you, that I've never been a traditional go get a job guy. I've had one job in my whole life.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
And I worked for a shoe store for a hot minute. And my whole life has just been owning my own companies. So at that point, I saw as a kid, my parents were miserable. They didn't like their job. They always complained when they got home. And I would say, well, why don't you quit? Why don't you do something else? And it was easier. 3 kids in the house. We don't have the time to go back and re-educate ourselves. And it's not about the education, it's about the motivation, in my opinion. You know, so I said I would never get a traditional job if I didn't have to. And I never had to.
That's right. That's right. Both my parents are entrepreneurs. And so I don't know what it would be like to not be a business owner, to not run, to not be at that level where I'm getting to put on all the hats. And I even though I watched all their struggles, there was something in me that was instilled in me that said, it's all worth it. Like, whether your life is going to be hard regardless. And just, you could see the other things that they were getting from owning and running everything. You could just see the passion flow when they would talk about their particular field. And it was something like, it was the passion that stuck with me. It was this understanding of, like, they really are doing what they're good at, what they truly feel they're good at, what their insides are saying this is the right place for them. And they have never stopped even to this day. And so I don't know. It's just, I totally get that. My family was not one of the families. They always were like, go to college, do something different. But they also instilled this value that on the side, you better have another side gig. You better have that third and fourth revenue stream. And this is how you do it, you know? And so I don't know. I think that was an extremely empowering growing up. And I don't think my inner circle of a lot of my friends, until I started owning my own businesses and getting to surround myself with owners, I never heard that exemplified in anybody else. Everybody else was like, I want to be a SWAT guy. I want to be the fireman. I want to be the, and I never had that ability to connect with anyone else until I was, 25.
Nice. Yeah. It's hard having a job. And then, like you said, it's hard really working for yourself. There's no steady paycheck there. There's always times of like, man, I just lost this account, or I'm really grinding. Like, how am I going to get it, get to eat? So, I started very early in life. People say, hey man, well, you worked at a radio station. That was a real job. Yeah, technically it wasn't. You know what I'm saying? I was talking on the radio, enjoying it, meeting a lot of celebrities, had a marketing agency too. So did I work for people to some degree? Yeah, I had, but they were clients, right? So it was a job that or a business that I owned, but I still had to satisfy clients. I own a lot of real estate. I have tenants in them. So I work for the tenants, right? I have to make sure that they're taken care of. Everything is okay with the residents for them. So, but it's different than you have to be here certain time and this is what I'm going to pay you, and no days off, no breaks for vacation. I don't know. That's a little nerve wracking, but I get it. And some people just don't have that in them to want to sacrifice and say, you know what, I don't want to risk the ability of not eating tomorrow or not being able to buy some clothes for my kids. So some people just don't have the I guess that time in their life to say, I'm going to just go this direction, regardless of what the the money brings to me.
Mm-hmm.
There is something about, go on, B.C.
No, you go.
There is something about jumping off that cliff and knowing that you have to fly. You just jumped off the cliff. If I remember sleeping behind the counter in my store for 2.5 years while we built it up, because I had to. I jumped off the cliff. If what I do today doesn't net me any money for 6 months, 5 months, but I also recognize that understanding of, I am working for value as opposed to working for an hourly wage. The value can be exponentially greater for the same amount of time, but it's a different thing when you finally jump off the cliff and there is no one to catch you. There is no other option but to make it work, to see it through, to work the 18 hours a day.
Right.
What, knowing and having all of that within you right now, I'm trying to explain how I want to say this. What what drives you then when there's at this point in your life, there's really, you're picking and choosing everything. You pick what clients you really want to work with. You're not taking every job that comes your way. You get to be more selective in the things you're working your time on and adding value to. How was that transition? What did that transition look like? And really, how long did it take you to finally get to that point?
It took me a minute. I'm not gonna lie, because I was trying to figure it out. So I went to school to be an engineer in college, and quickly realized that I didn't want a desk job, right? And I was following behind my dad. He was an engineer. He was in the Air Force. I was going to join the Air Force. Then I can't remember what war happened, and I was like, "No, screw that. I'm not about to go, go jump in the war scenario. I'm going to start a company." But man, I've had an aquarium business. When I was in college in my dorm, I was gifted a piranha, one piranha. So I was cutting hair in the dorm, and as I was cutting hair, I would feed this piranha when my guests were in there getting a haircut or waiting for me to cut their hair, right?
All right.
And it turned into this big phenomenon where all the kids would come to my room and watch me feed this fish. And so I ended up buying 15 piranhas, right? Bought them, and then I was charging people to come watch me feed the fish.
Wow.
And that turned into an actual business because then people wanted aquariums in the dorm. But I was one of the few that had a car, right? So I went and found a local aquarium store, convinced this guy to let me be a distributor for him, basically just in the dorm. And I was going to sell all these fish tanks, which I ended up doing. So I would buy the tanks, bring them in, set them up in my room, and people would just come and buy them and get the fish food from me. So I had a fish store in my actual dorm room.
All right, first of all, hold on a second. I got to imagine, Lenny, your dorm room did not smell wonderful. Like, if you have a bunch of piranhas and fish tanks in there, like, I can't smell great in that dorm room. It's a small room.
You just had to clean them. You had to clean them on a weekly basis. But, it was fun having a business there because college kids, we don't make money. Yeah. So I had a steady income because people had to buy things for those aquariums, right? Mm-hmm. So whether they wanted to decorate them, whether they wanted other fish, whether they wanted fish food. So conceptually, I said, you know what, man, this is a revenue driver for me. And then after I got out of school, I still had the business. I was kind of one of the first people to actually go around and clean fish tanks in people's homes. Huh. So there was a company called Petland. And I would make flyers and I would stand outside in the parking lot and pass them out. So I was like, hey, I can come to your house and clean it, maintain it, give you a program. I can even build your fish tank. So I'll never forget, I was doing really, really well. And I built this 250-gallon fish tank for this lady. And for whatever reason, the acrylic didn't cure. And we set it up and left, and it broke in her house, and it just was water everywhere. So she was really cool about it. She had me pay to clean and build. And she had trusted me to build her another one. So I built her another one, and everything was good. So I had some interesting time getting started. But a lot of those businesses kind of, led me to the next thing. So I was really fascinated with car radios. I used to do a car installation business at my mom's house when I was there. So she let me have a part of the garage. So I wanted to install car radios and speakers, subwoofers, all of that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So, but from DJing, music there, just kind of led me into the space of the industry. I know you wanted to kind of talk about that. So I was an intern for Virgin Records, early 80s, right? And then Virgin let me come into SEMA, which is their distribution, like Warner Brothers or Sony or Universal. So it was over in Middleburg Heights at the time. All the record labels were in Cleveland, by the way. So I had a chance to deal with the distribution. So Capitol Records was there, Busted Records was there, which was MC Hammer's label. So a lot of the artists came through. And at that time, there was no younger minorities in Virgin Records. There was one black guy who I was working for, but they had all crossover artists. So I was working Smashing Pumpkins, Tina Turner, Rolling Stones, and they signed Shaggy, they signed Shaggy, from the Wu-Tang Clan, College Boys, and Janet Jackson. So at one point they sent me out. I went to Janet's house. So they were releasing an album. So I got to work with her. Got to take the College Boys, Shaggy, and Raven was on the road with us too. So I took them to Freaknik. So we went down there a couple of times. How could I be down? And the gentleman next to me, he was a retail guy, meaning he was the guy, if you remember back in the day, they would have displays in retail stores.
Yes.
So he was responsible for going to put those posters up, making sure the end caps were great. And he got a promotion. And he said, hey, you know what, dude? You come in here all day, every day. I'm going to take you on the road with me and actually show you what the road life was like, right? What the management scenario was like. And so I got a chance to travel with Will Downing, Michelle Farrell, Arrested Development, MC3. And then I came home, and he was basically the one who was convinced me to leave Virgin Records and make them hire me as a consultant. I never thought it would happen. And I was like, there's not a chance I'm going to tell these people I'm about to leave this. Right?
Yeah, and I'm leaving, but you're also going to hire me in a different capacity.
It's a bold tactic. You know what I mean? You're putting yourself out there. You're kind of like a holdout in like the NFL. Like, I know you want me, but I'm not going to, I'm going to sit here until you pay me what I'm worth. That's a strategy, especially for a younger guy, right?
It's weird to walk out the door of the office as an employee and 30 seconds later turn around, walk right back in and be like, you're not my client, and it's like, it's such a powerful thing.
It is a powerful too.
It ended up working. So he ended up showing me the ropes, and I met another guy. His name was Kevin Chilius. So they both took me under their wing. So Fred Williams, Kevin Chilius kind of showed me the ropes. And ironically, Kevin and Fred were radio DJs too. I just didn't know it. So they asked me if I wanted to intern at another job. And I was like, wait a minute. Like, I'm about to own a company and run it, and now you want me to work for free and do what? So long story short, he said, come to my second job, which happened to be the radio station. So I get down there, and he said, hey, we'll come on in the studio. And I sit down, and, he opens the mic, and he's talking. I was like, is this the same dude I was listening to, growing up doing the hip hop? So there was 108, which was WDMT, and then Fred the Jammers, which he went by. So basically, he was the one who showed me everything about radio. So I didn't go to school for it. I didn't learn, at any of the schools about how to operate a board, open the mic. I spent 4 years with him. So initially, by me having all these artists in town, I had the ear to the streets, basically. So I would tell him, hey, you should play this record, or this is happening in the clubs. And so he was basically conditioning me to be a music director for my show, right? So it showed me the power of selecting the right music for the people to listen to, and also break music as well. So I would travel the country, of course, being on all these tours. I got a chance to hear a lot of music in other places. So house music, Miami bass, you got the West Coast, you got the East Coast music. So the Midwest was kind of like a melting pot of all different types of genres of music, right? Even rock, that was down in Cincinnati. So I was working for a rock label called IRS back in the day as well. So that kind of just led me into music, movies, fashion. I was one of the first people here to rap a vehicle. So you see all of these, buses wrapped, Red Bull cars.
Oh, yeah, the cars and all that. Yeah, absolutely.
I did that back in the day, long time ago.
It's a crazy journey. We're going to talk with Lenny Berry. Currently, Lenny's got a lot of jobs, as we're finding out. Currently, founder of the Ohio Cannabis Health and Business Summit. That's this weekend, 10/6, 10/7. Tickets are on sale right now. You can find them in the link below in the comments. Just $20 for 1 day, $35 for a 2-day pass. There's an awesome after party at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. All this stuff, if it's available, might be sold out. So check out the link below. Get your tickets. Go check out Cleveland, Ohio's really the only, but the fantastic Cannabis Summit with all sorts of vendors, panels, all that great stuff. So you're going through this, Lenny. You have this sounds like this amazing music vibe going. And then some point, and now we're probably around like 2010, 2011 or so, it looks like you kind of started to transition a little bit. And then it seems, and we'll start your cannabis journey here around Colorado, maybe where you got started with King Cannabis brands. Like, how did you dip your toe? You're in the music world, you're doing all these things. I know you got into real estate, but you're floating in now this world that's illegal, federally illegal, state legal. Obviously, Colorado would have been about 2-3 years legal at the time. Why dip your toe in the cannabis market? Was it just a great opportunity? Do you have a belief in that? What was your reason, I guess, for pushing into this industry? And then we'll talk about why we started the convention.
Well, so I will say the music industry was a lot of shadiness as well. So as far as the illicit gray area, I guess I was kind of already in there, right?
You were trained. You're like Bane. You're like, I was born in the illicit area.
So yeah, so Snoop was a client, Wiz Khalifa, all these guys that were heavy, weed smokers. But when you're doing, I would say I was kind of like an ambassador role, right? So it doesn't matter if you're a manager, doesn't matter if you're just a record exec, you still have to cater to the client. So the one major thing that I had realized was that I would call it a market Bible. I had to know everything about every city, right? No matter where we were at, who had the fire weed, who had the best girls, if the guys wanted chicks, and everything had to be on the DL, right? Because they didn't want the exposure for it. So, I just kind of knew who to go to because, I guess I was the plug, if you will, back in the day. But from that perspective, when it came here to Ohio the first year, 2016, I believe. So Responsible Ohio was trying to, onboard and get people on and legalize. We all know where that went. And I was kind of already involved because my neighbor across the street was a part of it too. And so back then, nobody wanted to be the face of anything cannabis, right? Because they were all professionals. But I was just a music guy, so they called me and was like, hey, man, would you, be the face of this application if you will? Because none of us really want to go on it. Yeah. So I'm like, yeah, cool, let's do it, But I at that point, it wasn't like a medical scenario. I had been really following the history of cannabis or anything like that. It was a business proposition. But once that didn't happen, with me having a lot of tenants too, it intrigued me to really start asking around to people that were actually smoking, right? I wasn't a cannabis user then. And I was just like, hey, are you smoking to get high? Are you smoking for a reason? And almost everyone that I was talking to was smoking because they had a medical condition, right? So it wasn't like it wasn't legal at the time, but they were treating epilepsy, PTSD or anything like that. And I was just like, okay, so now I really have to understand what this plan is about, right? So from then, when we didn't get the license the first round, I owned a property with a partner in Lakewood, right next, kind of 2 doors down from where Rise is right now on Madison.
Yes.
So I had a medical clinic. So I was doing recommendations for patients for 3 years. We had one in Lakewood and one in Maple Heights. So from there, I really got a chance to sit with patients and hear the stories and see the progress that the plant was helping them, or hearing the adverse effects from. It didn't help me, because I went to the dispensary and they didn't have what I needed. So they sold me something. So I got to hear all the stories, and that's what really touched me more so than anything. It wasn't even about the money. It was just about hearing the success of it being in a situation that was valuable for people. So when you look at the stigma behind it, it's like, man, these people are really using this medicine, but they're getting criticized, right? And so I'll never forget, I was on a podcast. Lynn Tolliver had invited me down on my second year. And there was a gentleman who was a guest there, I believe. And so when they said, hey, we're about to have this guy, he's going to talk about this cannabis conference, he just went ballistic. And I mean, he was really going off on me. Like, you're selling people fake hope. You're nothing but a drug dealer. I mean, just all kinds of crazy stuff. Wow. So, so at the end of the day, I said, okay, fine, I'll accept all of that, right? But I could tell he was definitely on some kind of medication, right? So I said, okay, well, sir, what are you taking, right? So we had this little quick debate, and I said, well, we're going to do this line by line. You write down your medicine, right? And then we're going to put cannabis on one side of it. So write down everything that you have an issue with as far as it causing you problems with, your sight or gallstone, anything. Don't care. And I mean, he's going away. And I said, look, I only need a few, right? You don't have to go down the whole list. And so I said, at the end of the day, you want to criticize businesses that are selling weed. You know, we'll use your words, your terms. Marijuana is bad. Okay. So we have these retail stores that are designated for people specifically for a medical condition that have to be regulated by the state, right? They're watched 24 hours a day, heavy security. You can't get in there without a card. But to your point, where do you buy your medicine, as you call it? And he said, well, I go to Drug Mart. I said, oh, okay, interesting, right? So you go to Drug Mart to buy your medicine. And he said, yes. So I said, well, let's talk about the issues that you're having with the medicine. What side effects are you having? And he started rambling a few things. And I said, but you're still taking it, though. He said, yeah, absolutely. My doctor told me, you know, I should take this and this. I said, so it caused you some problems, correct? And he said, yes. So they had to change my medicine to adapt to my body. And he's just preaching to me about it. So I said, okay, great. So you had adverse effects. You had all these side effects that were detrimental to your health. And you're going to Drug Mart to buy your medicine. But you don't have any issues with your program, your ritual, how you're doing your intake for your body with these, you know, pharmaceutical medications that you're saying. And he said, absolutely not. I said, okay, great. So while you have all of this stuff on the right side or the left side, what do you have on the right side for cannabis? And it was quiet. And he said, you're trying to set me up. I said, how am I setting you up? You Googled it. I didn't. You know, so if we're going to call a spade, let's just do that. So we're going to categorize both of these particular things as medicine, right? Because some people need this plant because they don't want to take what you're taking and have the issues that you're having with that medicine that you're getting from Drug Mart, right? So Drug Mart is selling you drugs. That's why the name is on the building. It says
it's in the name.
So at this point, he just, after we got off of air, he came to me and he was like, you know what, I'm sorry. I really didn't think of it that way. And I said, well, this is the reason why I had the conference. Because there are tons of people like you who want to, you know, stigmatize everybody else and bully people for doing something that they don't believe in. And I'm, you know, cool, you don't believe in doing it, but you don't have to hurt somebody else who needs this or who sees the benefit of it, right? But the major problem that we have is the lack of education. Because I don't know, I'm afraid of it. So therefore, I'm going to be the one to push it away because I don't know how to discuss it, right? So I think that's the easiest way for people to say, I'm going to tune it out because it doesn't make sense to me, instead of being open-minded and learning about it.
But it goes from this point with you where it's like you're around the culture constantly in the music industry, but inevitably your tenants and these other people who surround you later on, they start bringing out the Papa Bear out of you. It's now not a I'm doing this because it's just in my presence. I love getting high. I'm getting stoned. I like the effects of it. You're hearing that they can't get up in the morning without it, or that, you know, like they couldn't live their life in the way that they even remotely wanted to or need to survive without this medicine. And now the advocacy is a lot different of that messaging. That messaging is, no, I need to protect these people and their right to continue this education, to even ask the questions in the first place and see if this is helpful, because at the end of the day, this is their lives. This is their children's lives. This is, you know, grandfathers and parents and people who matter in your community, your neighbor. And it becomes much larger, you know, at that point. And so what is it? Was it a natural role to just that Papa Bear just naturally started coming out? You know, is it, do you feel like you still have to fight today, all these years later, for the right to even educate?
Absolutely. I always get criticized by my family for being too open-hearted, right? I think that's my kryptonite, to be honest with you. I put a lot of passion in people, and sometimes I don't get it back. But that's not my reason for doing it. I'm gonna help you out, and if it's not reciprocal, cool. I did what I wanted to do for you, and I just kept it moving. But my very first conference, I couldn't find a venue. Nobody wanted me there. Nobody. Really? So I convinced a hotel in Independence, which was the Crown Plaza at the time. A gentleman had just bought it, and he was really trying to get people to come to the hotel, right? So I said, look, here's what I'm willing to do. I'm selling them on it, but I said, I'm willing to rent out the hotel. Not me not knowing I was going to be able to pull this thing off.
Yeah.
And it was only a 4-month window to do it, right? So I had, long story short, I had been to a couple conferences here, and outside talking to some police officers is kind of what happened. And that used to do some security at some of the clubs I was DJing at or bringing people through, and or was on the air for the radio station, I should say. And people were complaining, like, "Hey, I spent all this money and I thought I was going to learn something, but I got some flyers, some soap, some T-shirts. Dude, this isn't do what I thought it was going to do, right?" So I was kind of taken aback by it, and then I left. I was with my attorney and one of her friends, and I said, I'm gonna actually do a conference. I'm gonna educate people. I'm tired of my patients complaining. I'm tired of people not understanding what it is. And we went to a whole bunch of different places, and finally I was like, screw it, I'm just gonna go to this hotel that just opened up, just kind of see what he says. So I walk in, he's giving me his spiel on why he didn't want me there, because he thought it was gonna keep people away. And I was like, well, contrary to that, I'm going to bring people to you. I'm going to give you the exposure that you need. So, I went to school for marketing. I have a marketing degree. So I sold them on the marketing aspects. Your target demo is the people that I'm about to bring to you, right? So, but I'm going to pay you for the usage. So I'm going to try to alleviate all your potential customers that are going to come to the hotel anyway. We're going to just alienate ourselves in here and be this island of cannabis people. If that's, if you're afraid of everybody seeing what it is. But once I presented it to him, he said, "Oh, this isn't a flea market thing," because everybody's thinking cannabis street marketing, right? So
people smoking all up in the hotel, like all that stuff. Yeah.
I was like, no, it's nothing like that. I'm about to bring these speakers in. So I had both of the bar rooms. I rented out the restaurant. I think we had about maybe 30 or 40 rooms in there because he didn't have the hotel done at the point. And we killed it. We had like between 600 to 800 people there. Right, School of Cannabis was there. Herbology was one of the new ones. I think Rise was there. So it wasn't a whole bunch of dispensaries at the time, but I didn't have a whole bunch of, soap companies or anything like that. It was health and wellness, because I really wanted people to understand that cannabis is health and wellness, right? So that's the reason I came up with the name of the conference was Ohio Cannabis Health Summit at first. And I did a survey, and after the survey, everybody was like, "Dude, you didn't talk about business enough." And I'm like, "Oh, I didn't think you wanted to know about that. I thought you just wanted to know about the science behind the medicine, right?
Yeah.
How to be a patient, how to get a card." They was like, "Screw that. We want to know how to make money." Right? So I said, okay. So I changed the name and rebranded to Ohio Cannabis Health and Business Summit. During that time, I was doing some charity stuff at the IX Center. Had a buddy over there who was working, and I was kind of helping him out, booking shows and things of that nature. So I was always in the building, right? And then finally, a guy named Bill Perriman, he was the VP there. And Bill was in a room, and he had me in a conference room one day. And he was like, what else are you into? And I was like, well, I really don't want to say, because I don't want y'all.
You got to pull that card out. You're like, no, I don't know.
Yeah. So I told him, hey, man, I'm in the cannabis space, and I would really love to do an event here. And he's like, I don't know about that. We're one of the most stringent venues in the country, right? I don't know if the demographic would accept that, or our other clients that we have here. And I really got pushback from a lot of those big shows there, because they didn't want me there. Right. I had went down to the convention center. They didn't want me there. So it wasn't until Claire, which I can shout out, Claire called me and said, hey, look, I think we can make this happen. So I was like, okay, great. So I came in, kind of gave a pitch of what it was, and they were reluctant to, because they had the stigma in their mind as well.
Yeah.
And you guys, I don't know if you were there or not. Well, I know BC was, but people did not understand what the IX Center was. A lot of people had not been there, right? Specifically in the industry. So for me to be able to talk them into or massage this relationship for over 2 years to let me do this this event in their venue, one, I just thought it was going to be like a bridging of the gap, right?
Yeah.
Because normally we don't have events in places that are generally for the general public.
Correct.
They're in a bar, they're in a hotel bar room. They're really
Whoever will take you is kind of how it fits these days.
Exactly. And so I said, well, this is going to be a big win for the industry because now we're going to put cannabis that's in Ohio on a spotlight, the big jumbotron out front, and then you come into this place and you have a Vegas feel to this conference, bringing all of these educators in. We had 100 vendors there last year. I think we had like 14 workshops. And the VP came up to me at the end and gave me a hug. It was like, oh my God, like this was very professional. You guys, we had police ready. Don't get me wrong. But I am very, very happy to say we would definitely want to keep you and have you do this for as long as you want to be here.
That's awesome.
So
it's amazing. It's amazing that you're able to. I'm going to take it, Dustin. It's amazing. It's amazing that you're able to basically like take them and talk them in to doing that for you in that regard. And now you've managed to grow it again, right? You've managed to make it even bigger. So let's talk about some of the changes happening for this year's Ohio Cannabis Health and Business Summit. Once again, the links are below. It's this weekend, Friday, October 6th, Saturday, October 7th. Let's start there. Last year was Saturday, Sunday. This year it's Friday, Saturday. Why?
Well, the reason was I had to compete against football, family functions. So Sunday was just a bust, in my opinion. We had about 600 people on Saturday compared to 1,200 on Sunday compared to 12 on Saturday. Mm-hmm. So again, surveying, talking to a lot of people that were there, a lot of the businesses were like, hey man, if you had it on a Friday, our business would pay for me to come. So, that's one way for you to get a lot of companies to come and be involved if you have it on a weekday versus the weekend. So I don't want to be here in Ohio. Everybody hated the fact that I had it in Cleveland, first of all. It's like, well, why don't you bring it someplace else? And I was like, well, that's the point. I'm from here. I always got to.
It's in the name,
So they wanted me to, do the typical Vegas, Miami. I was like, no. So here's the other issue too, is that when I was getting into this, I couldn't afford to come to your conference. Some of them I still can't, right? Yeah. And some of them you got to be alienated. You got to have a $250,000 money in the bank. You have to get a certification or a letter of recommendation from this person. I said, look, you guys are basically keeping the same crowd of people, so it's a revolving door of the upper echelons.
Yes.
What about us lower people, right? The people who don't have the money. So when you talk about education and you can, basically adhere to this, B.C., because you work at the School of Cannabis, you have to have the education in order to grow, right? So without the education, you don't know enough to even do anything. So I just feel like that's when you talk about social equity, not from a minority perspective, but just from the industry as a whole, getting in and learning. If I can't learn about it, how can I be in it and be successful at it, right? So I caught flack for the $25 tickets because the average industry is probably $400 to $1,000 to get in it, right? I caught flack for the $550 booth. It wasn't enough. I'm hurting the industry. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. Well, I'm trying to be inclusive, right? Yeah. So I don't want to be exclusive. I want to be inclusive. So I want to bring people together from all walks of life. So when you talk about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame event, the reason I didn't make it a cannabis event was because I wanted it to be a universal business networking event, right? Cannabis is just the same as Nike shoes or Dell computers or any of those other places. But because it's a plant that you don't understand, and in our mind, we would kind of brainwash as kids and, the war on drugs and dare and, all of this. Okay, yeah, I got it back then. But the science proves that there's some validity to this plant helping people. But you don't want to come away from the thought process of it being bad because it's a drug in your mind, right? So I say all that to say that's the reason why the summit is kind of formulated the way that it is. And I am very grateful for everybody, all the speakers and sponsors and vendors, you know, that trusted me enough to say, you know what, dude, I see that you're not charging no money, so you can't really pay me to fly in. So they're doing it out of the kindness of their heart to be one of the people that want to say, you know what, I want to help you educate people, you know, because you're doing it the right way.
That's just powerful. I just want to stop there and just say that's an extremely powerful and something to be admired in it. And as someone who's been to a lot of conventions and go to MJBizCon every year and travel to, I do see the other side, and in a lot of ways it is disheartening. And when I go to your show, I do, it's a total different vibe. I feel really, it's very community driven. It's very, even the people who are coming in to be educated, you could see them before the panel starts talking to each other and educating each other. And they're just, two neighbors. They're not even neighbors. They never met each other in their lives. They have nothing associated with business. They're not even necessarily a patient within the state, but they're communicating about this. That openness and willingness to ask questions. I love the fact that the convention center is the perfect place to allow you to scale this. All the infrastructure's there. I couldn't imagine doing an outside event and knowing, well, if I had 1,200 people this year and we want 1,600 next year, I need 30 more porta potties. I need 30 more, all these other things that beautifully big building is able to scale with you, grow with you.
Right.
As someone who, as someone who is almost at the forefront of innovation and timing for literally your entire life, and now everybody you talk to within the convention and to get these booths, they are companies with proprietary and exciting new innovations to this industry. What are some things on the forefront that are getting you excited about the industry? What are some of the things that are products or processes that you've seen and discussed recently that just are like, wow, this is the future. I cannot wait to watch where these guys are in 3 years, or what this process looks like in 3 years.
Well, I think first and foremost, the possibility of legalizing it here in November, has me super excited, right? It just means that we're on the right path to making the country feel more comfortable about cannabis. But when you talk about innovation, man, the science and technology behind a lot of these products are amazing, to the point where I can make something that makes you feel a certain kind of way, and I can guarantee it's going to happen.
Yes.
Whether it's these hybrids, all these genetics that you're coming out with. I mean, it's amazing the different devices now that you see where you can vape a couple different products in one device just by clicking and turning it around. I'm an edibles guy, so I love the variations of the popcorns and the different types of chocolates and things that you can eat, versus actually smoking. But I'm just intrigued by the different things that are helping various conditions, right? So, at first I wasn't really up on how a sativa could work, or how an indica hybrid could work for, somebody who's dealing with epilepsy, or somebody who's dealing with, MS. So when we're talking about the myelin sheathing around your spinal cord, the spasticity that these MS patients have to deal with. So, when you start to really understanding and diving into what's causing this particular condition, I think this is where, I guess, traditional medicine fails a lot of people. It's nothing wrong with doctors. Hey, we need them, we love them. But, I'm just going to use me as an example. I have a 8-year-old son, but when he was a baby, he was having seizures, right? But a baby, like 1 year old. So we went to the doctor, and he was in the hospital for 8 days. And first time he had the seizure, we're freaking out. I'm crying. I'm just like, man, what the heck is going on? Help my son. But the first thing that they come to me with is putting him on a drug called Keppra. And, I was like, okay. So let me call, because I have physicians working in my clinic. Like, dude, what is this? And what are the side effects from it? And then as I started calling a lot of people that I knew who had epilepsy, it was like, no, you definitely don't want them on that drug, because it causes something called Keppler rage, right? So I have a cousin who was in the Army. He got hit with shrapnel in the head, and he had seizures at that point, and they put him on Keppler, and it was a suicidal tendencies. It just made you angry. So I said, well, based off of what I just researched, you want me to put my baby on this?
Yeah.
Absolutely not. I'm not doing it. So I said, give me a reason why he's having the seizure before you give me a reason to medicate him.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go that direction first. He's here 8 days. Give me the results, and then we can talk about medication. They didn't find anything. So I said, well, what are we treating? Why, you know what I'm saying? Why am I going to medicate? So, they tried to scare me with the deaths around epilepsy, and I was like, okay, I'll take my chances. It's a 1% chance that he dies in his sleep from having a seizure. I'll live with that. So we left. He had another seizure a year later. Oh, you definitely should put him on this medicine now, because you never know. No. So we talked to his pediatrician, and she said, no, you're doing the right thing. Because the thing is, if I put him on this medicine, I'll never know if it was the medicine that was helping him or if he was outgrowing it, right? Or his body was just changing as a kid, that whatever the neurons in his head just wasn't, jiving, to say. So thank God he's never had another seizure, and it's been 6 years, right? So had I put him on this medication, I probably would have been stuck with it. But the reason I really didn't do it is because I asked him how you have to wean off of the medicine. You can't just stop, right? So you start on it, and it may take you a whole year to get your body used to not being on it. And I was like, what kind of craziness is that? You know, it's, especially for a little baby. So it really just opened my eyes, to be honest with you, when I started seeing there was a patient. I thought he was an invalid. We were in Colorado at the time. Sorry. And, this dude comes in, and his wife was like at its end. Like, I don't know what to do for him. And, he comes back after my guy, Angel, makes this, cocktail for him, gave him all this instructions on what to do. And this guy walks in, man, and, didn't know that it was the same dude. And he was just like, this really helped me. I am able to sit with my family and eat, and have dinner with the kids and help them with homework. And I was like, all right, I'm all in. You know what I'm saying? If this medicine could do that for somebody, and it was really the drugs that he was taking that was keeping him sedated, right? So heavy that he couldn't function. So I'm thinking to myself, how can is the medicine helping, or is the medicine just kind of a Band-Aid?
Yeah.
So, I like I said, I think some medications could definitely help people. But there are some medications that are just kind of just like maintaining people, right? So you're just maintaining a situation. Nobody wants to be maintained. I want to be better. I want to be able to get off of these diabetic drugs or whatever it is I'm taking. So let me eat right. Give me some guidelines to help me get my insulin down naturally, if that's the case, versus always, want to give me something to take. So, I mean, I'm heartfelt, man. I'm all in this because I have a reason to be personally. I watch my kid. I watch a lot of my tenants. I watch a lot of family members now. Ironically, a lot of church people. Initially they didn't know who I was, and as you probably would see, I never really claimed any of this. And the reason I didn't claim or be the face of the conference initially was because I didn't want it to be a cultural thing. Because there is a stereotype with Black men too, right? So if I was saying, hey, I'm Lenny and I'm trying to educate you, you may not get past this screen right here, right? So it's like, nah, I'm not going to this Black dude's conference. He's a young guy. He looks like a drug dealer. So you're only as credible as the messenger.
I look like the drug dealer. If you had your face on the billboard or my face on the billboard, they're choosing you every time.
All day, every day over Dustin.
I agree. I agree, Dustin. But it's not a stigma on you per se.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So at that point, I said, I don't even need to know need to know who's doing it. I just need them to come and get educated. So, my family made me go on stage, and I did the Russell Simmons where I was like, "Hey, thanks for coming. Good night." Like, I introduced myself. I didn't say what I was doing. I just said thank you and left. But when I left, when I had to go to the IX Center, I didn't have any help really, and I had to wear all the hats. So I don't have a big old staff or anything like that, man. I'm just grinding every day by myself for the most part, trying to get things going. I had a young lady, well, not young, but a lady named Marsha come and, lend a hand, and my family was lending a hand. And so after the first year, people basically took note and was like, okay, man, you spend a lot of money doing this for somebody else because you don't have a license. You don't have a reason to be trying to push this industry forward. And I said, it's not about me having anything. It's about the people that need the knowledge to use it. So, for me, that's really why I'm here. I'm trying to be a light for people, for businesses as well, because the industry is stagnant. There's a gap in the patient population, with 700 some thousand people who have a recommendation and only 150, 60,000 using it. I get it. Going to Michigan is cheaper. But there's a disconnect here. Something is not right. So, and in my opinion, education is probably half of that, right? Because you go in as a patient, get a recommendation, and I've seen it 50 million times where you take an edible and it's like, oh shoot, I didn't know I wasn't supposed to take the whole candy bar, and then you get scared, right?
Yeah.
But I had this conversation yesterday with somebody, and I said, well, when you drink too much, let's go back to your college days. You probably got tore up a couple times, and got to the point where you were really drunk. Maybe the next day you woke up, but it didn't scare you from drinking again with your people.
No, I went that same night.
So I don't want to keep,
no, it's all right. It's been a really, let's do this, Lenny. That story, I mean, clearly the passion is really behind it. Let's give everyone just kind of the highlights that are coming this weekend. Who are some of the panels? I know you have a ton of vendors. One of the great things about the Ohio Cannabis Health and Business Summit, links below, inexpensive ticket prices to get in. That was one of the great things. Everyone can go. It's not just for business folks. If you have an interest, if you've never heard of it, if you hate cannabis, it's a great place to come get educated. There are a tremendous amount of vendors, so we know they'll be there. I love it that you got the big boys. You got the big boys in Ohio. You have the other cannabinoids in Ohio, and you have the small vendors, local vendors, a one-person operation selling T-shirts and other things also there. But as far as panels go, guests coming in, speakers, run through some of the highlights for us. Who can we expect? Who are we hoping to see? What can we learn? What are some of the topics being talked about this weekend at the Ohio Cannabis Health and Business Summit, IX Center, October 6th and 7th?
So our keynote speaker this year is Andrew D'Angelo. They're famous for the Harborside dispensaries, also the Last Prisoner Project. So he will be speaking on Saturday. We have the world-renowned Ed Rosenthal, the granddaddy cultivation. So he will be here speaking. Christine DeJesus is going to moderate that panel from Galenas. We have I want to say a CEO panel. So we have the CEOs of Ascension with Fatty, Candace Moeller from IHS, I believe, kind of trying to think of on my head, Erin Gore, she has a company called Garden Society. And then the investment panel, I think is going to be amazing. So Rusty from OPAL, the CEO from that, he's going to be here on that panel. We have the old CEO from Standard Wellness. His name is Eric Vaughn. He is now the mushroom guru. So his company is called Epiphany. Mike Blogna is going to moderate that panel. We have the patient panel, of course. All our fabulous patients of Ohio, but ironically this year, most of those patients are actually in the industry. So you have Broderick from Benaleaf, you have Ace from Buckeye Relief, you have one of your guys, Brian Adams, he's going to moderate that panel, and Mary Bourdain.
I love her too. A lot of
Mary.
Courage. She's Ed Rosenthal, Mary. They just did some things with Courage and Cannabis and Dr. Bridget, which was awesome. We worked a lot with Andrew D'Angelo. Mike Blogna is a very good personal friend of ours.
Okay.
You're like, so Christina is amazing over at Kalinas, and you really, really jam pack these panels. They are there's not a panel that I went through on the scheduling where there wasn't 2 out of 4 that I knew, or 2 out of 4 that I was just extraordinarily excited to finally see in person and get to hear what they have to offer and say. So it really is going to be an incredible show.
Well, no, I appreciate it. Yeah. So we had the workshops downstairs. There's a few extraction clinics there. We have a ton of attorneys that's going to talk about, the upcoming ballot initiative. So you would definitely want to get there. So, the person that's over the New York cannabis market, her name is Tremaine Wright. She's coming in, so she's going to be on that panel with Tom Heron, and I believe Tim Johnson is moderating that. We have a lot of big name people here this year, which is really amazing for the city and for the culture. A lot of people say, "Hey, man, you don't have a lot of people from Ohio." Well, I do. The whole patient panel is all from Ohio. There's Michelle Blank. She's on the Woman in Cannabis. Kate from the Botanist. I could go.
And the workshops are very Ohio related. Dave Patton, we've had on the show. He's doing one of the workshops. Carrie Yeager is doing one of your workshops.
Yep,
we've had her on the show. There is a lot of locals here. I don't know how someone could say that when I feel like 80% of it are friends and family from this town, from near us.
Well, they wanted all Ohio, but I had to explain to people too. I'm all about, I'm born and raised here, right? So I definitely want us to win. But, it's like going to the nightclub or a bar. You go to a neighbor bar, you see the same people every week, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I love it. Hey, nice to see you, but man, I would love to see somebody new in here. So you got to get a different perspective from different industries and different markets too. So we're going to learn from these other people to help Ohio grow as well, and also be innovative. Maybe it's something in California or Arizona or Denver that's doing well that we don't know anything about. So I kind of relate it all back to music too. If I wouldn't have brought up 2 Live Crew from Miami, we would never be Miami-based people, or going to DC and getting the house music from Baltimore. So the culture has to, I guess, breathe some, and then be able to say, okay, Andrew brought a perspective that I wouldn't have known about because I'm not in the markets that he's in, or Ed Rosenthal. Yeah, there's a lot of great growers here, but not a lot that have his recognition. So, that was my thought process.
I think it works. Yeah, I think you want to see it's where else other than in these really expensive conferences like MJBiz are you going to get an access to Andrew D'Angelo, to Ed Rosenthal, to some of these folks. So it's an amazing event. I'm really looking forward to it. October 6th and 7th. Dustin and I will be floating around. Be wearing our Because Cannabis t-shirts. You'll see us around doing some things there as weekend as well. Lots of great folks. Check it out. The Ohio Cannabis Health and Business Summit. Links below. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame after party as well. All those tickets are available in the links. It's this weekend, everyone. Get there. Check it out. Lenny will be floating around. Lots of great products. If you support the industry or are just kind of curious, it's definitely a place that you want to check out. Thank you, Lenny Berry. So much going on in your life. But thank you for putting on this great conference. Thank you for stopping by the show and chatting with us for a little bit today. We appreciate your time. All right, Dustin.
Busiest man in the industry, dude. He is so busy. It's almost unbelievable. He incredible. What an awesome
mover and shaker. I forgot to pitch him the fledgling podcast company, Wayward Media, that's promoting the visionary plant medicine space. Maybe we'll talk to Lenny about that. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. If you want to check out this show, hit subscribe. Make sure you check us out every single Wednesday, 4:20 p.m. on YouTube. Give us a subscription or follow us. Spotify videos on Thursday, everywhere you listen to audio podcasts. Check us out at MeetWM socially. Dustin Kava, always great to see you. Have a wonderful week. You, Dustin, you, the listener, have a great week as well. Tell your friends about the show. We'll see you this weekend. The Ohio Cannabis Health and Business Summit, everyone. Later.
Educate them if you got them.